are there other things that you learned either observing your own children or other people's children as they've kind of gone through this, just this seemingly kind of disorienting relationship with one's body and with one's identity?
Yeah, the first thing that becomes really clear is how life online makes you just naturally kind of remote from your embodied existence. Like you just feel like somehow my body's not really me, because the me is the one that's interacting with people online whom they either love or hate or whatever. And those people have no interaction with me as embodied. And so I think that kind of accelerated this tendency we already had to scapegoat our bodies. It really accelerated it. And also the fact that these body questions really are identity questions just becomes so clear, because you see as your kids are growing up, they're grappling with who am I? It's so important. And as a parent, you often see aspects of who they are that they can't see. So I always encourage people whose kids are struggling maybe with gender issues, or really any parent. It's such a helpful strategy to affirm those true things about your child that you see that maybe they can't see, because that helps them to start to get a sense that I have an identity that's rooted in something, and I don't have to kind of go to these sort of online performative activities. I can double down on the person that my mom says that I am and see if that seems to be true.
Yeah. As you're talking here, I'm reminded of Father Matthew Lamb and his great, who was a great, many things, but just a great intellectual, a great Catholic priest, a great teacher, great Thomist, but especially his love for Augustine and his love for memoria in Augustine, memory. But he would always say memory in the ancients was not remembering things in the past as though it's a catalog of information, but really memoria is that continuity of identity. And he would often talk about the fact that, every 7 years, all the cells in my body regenerate. So every 7 years, I have no material continuity. Mm-hmm. And yet I'm the same person. I'm the same person as I was when I was 10 years old, when I was 5 years old, when I was 20. And yet in another way, of course, I'm always, my understanding of myself is unfolding, developing. And so how is that sense of, maybe to begin to kind of like pose a little bit of the solution, right? What does it mean to recover our memoria, our memory of who we are, and to be able to say, to kind of lean into our identity from a theological perspective?
Yeah, I think, in fact, we really do have to go theological to really answer that question, because the best that people can do without taking a personal loving God into account is kind of the pagan sense that, I am the person that, the nation I'm born into and the family I'm born into. And those provide a lot, but especially given how liquid our society is, you can't really rely on those. And a lot of people don't know who one or more of their parents are, right? Like it can be really hard to rely on that when we're kind of, things are so liquid. So, the real truth to who a person is the idea, the plan that God has for each person. And that's the thing that anchors us in all of the change and, my cells turning over and, old relationships dying, new relationships starting, like all of the change that happens in our life. The thing that anchors that and gives it meaning is that God has a plan for me as an individual. That obviously means being a saint, but being a particular kind of saint. Like, what kind of saint am I supposed to be? And relying on that is the thing that anchors our identity in the midst of a lot of change, which is how God made us. God made us to live in space and time and to encounter change. And so his plan has always been that we rely on his loving plan for our identity.
That is it's really powerful to consider that idea that providence is necessary to discover identity. Because in a certain sense, if identity is, or at least to discover the fullness of our identity, right, is some recognition of providence, because as I change over time, yes, I can recognize within myself a kind of continuity. That is true. But to recognize that somehow fits into the cosmos, right? If the cosmos is accidental, I'm accidental.
Exactly.
And if the cosmos is providential under a loving God, then I'm providential.
Yeah.
And this idea that, and I think sometimes that this comes across to me a lot when I'm teaching Aquinas on like the triune God as God, and we were talking about the arguments for the existence of God, and in some ways they are arguments for the existence of God, but they're not the arguments for the existence of just any God, a generic God. They're really the arguments for a creator God, and for a creator God who is providentially holding everything in being, in whom we move and live and have our being. And I think that's what people really struggle with today, is belief in not just a God. I think a lot of people might recognize a God might exist, but the idea that he's providentially at work, right, that I was born, that I was born in this time, in this place, but not to stay as I am, right, but to grow and change. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the like button and subscribe to the Catholic Theology Show. Thanks, and God bless.